Today, we're going to talk about something that so many of us deal with, but we rarely put a name to it. It's those draining relationships, the ones that feel totally impossible to get out of without some huge dramatic confrontation. But what if there's a quieter way, a more powerful way to get your peace back? Let's dive in. You know the feeling, right? Your phone lights up, you see that one name pop up on the screen, and boom, your stomach just drops. It's that instant wave of dread before you've even read the message because you already know it's coming. It's going to be drama or a subtle dig or some kind of guilt trip. So, the big question is, how do you make it stop without a massive fight? You desperately want the cycle to end, but you really don't want the blow up and all the fallout that comes with it. Well, we're going to break down a method for making these draining patterns just kind of fade away. Okay, so first things first, before we can even think about a solution, we have to get really clear on what the problem looks like. Let's actually identify the signs that a relationship isn't just tricky, but is actively draining the life out of you. And as we go through this, it's so important to be clear on the goal here. This is not about winning an argument, it's not about revenge, it's not about getting the last word in. This whole thing is a strategy for self-preservation. The real prize here isn't winning, it's getting your own peace and your own energy back. So let's do a quick little self-check, just for you. Ask yourself, do you find yourself tensing up, like bracing for impact before you even talk to them? Do you walk away from conversations completely exhausted, just replaying everything you wish you'd said? Do you feel like you're constantly on trial, having to explain the most basic life choices? And here's a big one. Do they seem to get a weird kind of energy from conflict? If you're nodding along to any of this, you're definitely in the right place. So why is it so ridiculously hard to just stop, to just walk away? I promise you, it's not because you're weak or you lack willpower. There's actually a really powerful psychological reason that these kinds of dynamics are so addictive and so hard to break free from. And that reason is called intermittent reinforcement. It's this wild concept from behavioral psychology, and it basically says that unpredictable rewards are way, way more addictive than predictable ones. It's the exact same principle that makes slot machines in Vegas so irresistible. You have no idea when the payoff is coming, so you just keep pulling that lever again and again. So here's what that looks like in a real relationship. One day, this person is just wonderful. They're sweet, they're helpful, they apologize for everything. You feel this huge rush of relief, of hope. This is the good version. That's the reward, the pull that keeps you hoping, that keeps you invested. And then, bam, whiplash. The very next day, they can be sharp, cold, critical, even cruel. And it's this unpredictable switching between good and bad that creates the hook. It keeps you off balance, confused, and always trying to figure out how to get back to the good them, hoping that this time it'll stick for good. So what is the payoff they're actually getting from you in these moments? It's usually not what you think. You might not even realize you're giving them a reward, but it's your emotional energy. It's getting a rise out of you, making you over-explain and justify yourself, getting you to argue back, or even getting you to apologize for something you didn't even do. Every single one of those reactions is a payoff, and it's what feeds the dynamic and keeps them coming back. Okay, so we've nailed down the problem and the sneaky psychology that keeps us stuck. Now let's get to the good stuff, the solution. Think of this next part as your toolkit, the real practical things you can do to make this whole dynamic fade out without some big dramatic announcement. I love this metaphor because it's so perfectly clear. You don't stand in front of your sink and give a big speech about why you're turning off the water, right? You just turn the handle. A silent boundary is the exact same idea. It's all about changing your own actions, not trying to give them a new set of rules they can just argue with. The whole method really just boils down to these three things. That's it. Number one, you gradually reduce their access to you, your time, your energy, your information. Number two, you reduce the emotional payoff you're giving them. And number three, and this is probably the hardest but most important part, you have to stay consistent. All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful tools you have. I call it the boring response. And the goal here is super simple. You are going to become a conversational black hole, a dead end. You give them absolutely nothing to latch onto, no emotional bait to bite, no opening for a debate. And the phrases themselves, they can be ridiculously simple. Think about it. Got it. Okay. I can't. They're polite, sure, but they're also final. And most importantly, they're boring. There's nowhere for the conversation to go. You're not justifying, you're not explaining, you're just stating a fact and closing the loop. Now, here is a massive rule of thumb that can change everything for you. Learn to separate their tone from their request. When you get one of those texts that's just dripping with attitude, your instinct is to respond to the tone. But that's the trap. Responding to the tone pulls you right into the drama. If you learn to respond only to the logistical request, you starve the conflict of oxygen and you protect your energy. And remember, reducing access doesn't have to be this big confrontational thing. It can be a series of really small, quiet actions. Mute their notifications on your phone. Silently leave that group chat that always blows up. Stop volunteering personal information that they can just use against you later. Each one of these little steps is like quietly closing a door that they used to just walk right through. Okay, now this next part is maybe the most important piece of the whole puzzle. Because when you start changing the rules of this unspoken game, you can't expect them to just quietly accept it. There is almost certainly going to be a reaction. So let's talk about what that looks like and, more importantly, how you handle it. And believe it or not, there's actually a clinical term for this reaction. It's called an extinction burst. Think of it like this. If you go to an elevator and press a button that has always worked, but today it doesn't, what do? You don't just give up. You press it again, probably harder and faster, right? The exact same thing happens here. When the old behavior stops getting them the reward, they will try it harder before they finally give up. So what does this pushback actually look like? Well, it can take a lot of different forms. It might be this sudden, over-the-top sweetness to try and pull you back in. That's called love bombing. Or it could be angry outbursts and insults. It will almost definitely involve some heavy-duty guilt trips. And they might even try to pull other people in to get them on their side. Recognizing these tactics for what they are, a totally predictable extinction burst, is your absolute best defense. I really, really want you to hear this next part. When that pushback comes, and it probably will, it does not mean your boundary failed. In fact, it's often the clearest sign you could possibly get that you're doing something right. It means they've noticed the faucet has been turned off and they are trying with all their might to turn it back on. So let's bring this all home. After you've identified the dynamic, you've understood the psychology, and you've held firm through that inevitable pushback, what's the actual point of all this? What's the goal we're working toward? It all comes back to this one simple truth. People keep doing things that work for them. When you consistently, patiently remove the reward, your big emotional reaction, the arguments, the justifications, the behavior simply has no reason to continue. The whole dynamic just starves, and they'll eventually go look for that payoff somewhere else. And let's end on this because it's such an important reframe. For so many of us, especially people pleasers, setting any kind of boundary can feel selfish or mean or aggressive. But this isn't about being rude. This is about setting a standard for how you expect and deserve to be treated. It's about deciding that your inner peace is completely non-negotiable, and that right there is a standard worth perfecting.